Do you have a movie that makes you cry or feel the same emotions just as strongly as the first time you watched it every single time? I have one. It's Sinners. Sinners is a 2025 film written and directed by Ryan Coogler. It is one of the few true blockbuster films we've gotten in the last several years, as sequels, series, remakes, and movie adaptations have taken over the film industry. The movie is set in the 1930s Mississippi Delta, following two brothers, the Smokestack Twins, who escaped their abusive father, went to the military and fought in World War I, joined the Irish and Italian mobs respectively, and returned to the Delta with the spoils of their dirty work in Chicago. The movie follows their endeavor to open a juke joint. After purchasing a sawmill from an obviously racist white man named Hogwood, this is important, we'll get back to that later, they solicited the help of several people, including a blues musician, Delta Slim, a hoodoo practitioner and the ex-lover of Smoke, Annie, old friends and business owners Grace and Bo Chow, and two sharecroppers, one being their cousin and musician Preacher Boy Sammy, and old friend Cornbread. With the help of these people, they successfully opened their juke, many people were in attendance, and the juke was underway. There was lots of beautiful music, togetherness, games, lots of alcohol, and lots of dancing. However, the night was interrupted by three white vampires who wanted Sammy and would do anything to get him. The vampires led to the demise of everyone in attendance aside from Smoke, Sammy, Stack, and his lover, Mary. However, Stack and Mary had been turned. Though Smoke would remain at the sawmill after sending Sammy home, lying in wait for the local Ku Klux Klan that had planned to ambush and murder the people at the juke, led by Hogwood, Smoke slaughtered them all and died once the deed was done. However, there is a reason I'm explaining all this. If you don't get Sinners, Sinners wasn't meant for you. Now let me explain further. There are drastically differing opinions on this film, and there are too many people who simply don't get it. A lot of people criticize that the plot was bad, hard to follow, or simply non-existent. The characters have no depth, there was too much singing, and several other less important points. In relation to the plot, this movie was made for Black people by Black people, and as a Black person who was born and raised in the southern United States, I think the plot is pretty linear and easy to follow. As I just explained, explicit aspects of it in its entirety in no time with minimal effort. The deeper implicit meanings are also somewhat easy to grasp with pretty minimal effort and brainpower needed once you really try to read into them. A group of oppressed people just want to feel free for a night, and they come together with music and food and alcohol. Some oppressors come and interrupt their night, trying to take something that is originally theirs alone from them being the oppressed people, and would do whatever it takes to take it, resulting in the harm of those oppressed people. Of those who weren't tragically ended by the first set of oppressors, one was forced to return to what they knew, falling back in line, temporarily in this case, and the other was met with more oppressors, who eventually took what they wanted from him. In that case, his life. My interpretation of this, in short, is that, like music, white people and other non-Black people take from the Black community and harm them for selfish reasons, and if it's not one thing or one group, it's another. With the argument that there is little to no depth to the characters, I find it to be appalling. The Smokestack Twins got a lot of heat in terms of character depth. Many people just saw them as Michael B. Jordan 1 and 2 with horrible accent. It's explicitly stated that their father abused them, they were World War I veterans, and they were mobsters who, even though there were instances of them being crude and being feared by the locals in their hometown, were humans with traumas. And that's just the shared trauma the twins have. Smoke was in love with Annie and they lost their child. Stack was in love with Mary, but she was a white passing woman. He didn't want her to be harmed or killed for being in love with a Black man, so he left her. Sammy has his religious traumas, as his father is a preacher, and he is constantly condemned for his love of music and the blues. Annie, of course, had to also deal with the trauma of losing her child and the burden of knowing her love was going to war and having no way of contacting him or making sure he was alive and well. Mary lost the love of her life, was forced to marry a white man she didn't love for security because it was the 1930s and her mother had recently passed in relation to the setting. Delta Slim tells the story of his friend who was lynched in public by white men at a train station after being falsely accused of theft simply for being a Black man with money. He turned to alcohol and music to cope with his traumas, and in the end he gave his life to save Sammy, Smoke, and Pearline. There are other areas of depth for each of these characters, but these are the more obvious ones. An example of something deeper would be at the end of the movie when Smoke tries to roll his own cigarette after his brother had rolled them for him throughout the entire movie, and you see that he has tremors, realizing how bad his PTSD is. Once again, the argument of character depth is wildly out of left field, and I can only think that you've never experienced trauma or life as an oppressed person if you think that there's no depth to these characters. Lastly, the argument of there being too much singing. It's a movie that takes place mostly inside of a juke joint, meaning there would be lots of music. That being said, Ryan Coogler himself noted that this was a movie about Black people and Delta blues. He wanted to, in a way, share the origins of the blues music through storytelling. It's a movie about and focusing greatly on music. The blues genre is one of the most influential genres of music in the world. It inspired rock, R&B, jazz, country, and funk music. It is one of, at the time, the most important genre of music to the Black community and its connectivity. And might I add that the soundtrack, as well as the score of this film, are phenomenal. I want to briefly touch on the fact that there are people who only registered the sex scenes in their minds and saw nothing else beyond that. I don't even know what to say to these people who completely ignore all of the meaning, both explicit and implicit, that is featured throughout the film. I can understand some people's argument that the sex was unnecessary, but I think the plot needed it to progress, because I don't see any other way that Stack could have been bitten. And have horror movie watchers not for a long time now expected there to be at least one sex scene in a horror movie that involves people being murdered? Though I am very passionate about this movie, I can only really be 100% sure about two things, and that is what's been explicitly stated by Ryan Coogler. And that is that the film is about Black people and the blues. As media and films allow for open interpretation to a certain extent, there is an infinite number of possible interpretations of this film and its meaning or meanings. Some minorities have negative reviews and understandings of this film, and many non-minorities have very positive reviews and great understanding of it. I should also make it clear that the overwhelming majority of people have had a very good impression and understanding of the film. Even so, this film is an amazingly impactful movie about Black struggles in America and how the Black community has managed to create so much beauty and love in art and community despite oppression and hate that plagues the everyday experience of being Black. Not only does it touch on the Black community struggles, but it also touches on the fact that the community experienced struggles alongside other minority groups and how they formed communities with these adjacent oppressed groups. People who do not get it don't get it, likely because they lack sociological imagination, the ability to view personal problems and how they relate to society, history, and politics. The film touches on the cycle of systemic oppression that the Black community faces at the hands of the white majority. Despite the taking of land, money, and what is desirable from Black culture and bastardizing it, the Black community will continue to create and find beauty in the darkness, as has been proven time and time again. Thank you.